Born in Philadelphia, the cradle of our democracy.
Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
26, 2026, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. The twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump suffered 2 setbacks today in this push for Republican-led states to draw electoral maps favorable to the party that also deprives black folks of political power. South Carolina Republicans joined with Democrats to stop the erosion of the congressional district of Congressman Jim Clyburn, and a federal court ruled Alabama must use the map that had 2 black representatives. We'll talk to plaintiffs in the Alabama case. The Congressional Black Caucus is demanding that corporate America publicly reaffirm its commitment to voting rights and equal representation as the tax on unfair representation of black political and economic power continues to grow. Sports journalist Harold Bryant will be joining us to talk about why the NAACP's boycott urging black athletes not to attend Southern colleges and universities is a wake-up call. Plus, I'll show you. We'll talk about my one-on-one with Texas Democratic State Senator Representative James Tellerico, who's running for the United States Senate. Plus, we'll talk with Ambassador Andrew Young about the passing of Dr. King's legal counsel and big-time advisor Clarence B. Jones, who passed away on Friday at the age of 95. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the fine. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
A 3-judge federal panel in the Northern District of Alabama has at least temporarily blocked the state of Alabama from redrawing congressional districts, effectively eliminating one majority-minority district. Of course, the courts highlighted the importance of legal process in shaping the political representation. The 102-page order issued Tuesday morning means Alabama would be required to hold the June 16th primary runoffs using the current federal court-drawn map, which maintains the 2nd Congressional District in South Alabama as a majority-minority district. That's the one that's represented by Congressman Shamari Figures. Now, these judges laid into Alabama, laying out exactly what the hell they were doing. Dr. Marcus Castor, the lead plaintiff in the Allen v. Castor case, joins us from McIntosh, Alabama. Evan Milligan, the lead plaintiff in the Allen v. Milligan case, joins us from Montgomery. Glad to have both of you here. For Evan, we were in a group chat last week, and you talked about what was happening in the case, and you just laid out how your attorneys were just crushing the attorney for the state of Alabama, exposing just them. Evan, can you hear me?
Hey, I hear you now.
Okay, all right.
Sorry about that.
I said, lay it out to us how your attorneys were just showing the blatant racism.
Exactly. It was shocking for me to watch it. We've been on this journey with Dr. Castor and our other co-plaintiffs on all of these cases since 2021. My son is about to turn 6. He was a knee baby. My hair was much shorter and not as gray when we started. And watching what happened on Friday, it was like watching, the state's argument just unravel there in the courtroom. And one of the things that the judges were really interested in is hearing them explain more about why they had said 4 years ago that the courts intervening 3-4 months before an election was problematic then, but this year that same government is attempting to announce new elections in the midst of our primary elections. Our absentee voting had already started. And so they were interested in that one logistical issue, in addition to the constitutional concerns and all of the other arguments that our attorneys raised. And the state wasn't able to provide a coherent rationale.
The thing here, Marcus, that really jumps out at me, and what Evan laid out, and the judges are right. I mean, listen, this Supreme Court in December said, it's too late to rule in the Texas case, and the primary was in March. That was 3 months away. But they basically said to Louisiana, Alabama, oh, yeah, y'all go right ahead. Oh, I know ballots already gone out, but it's no big deal. Go right ahead. That's just like, what the hell changed in 5 months?
That was nothing that changed. What happened was, in the Callais case, they really just wanted a case presented for them so that they can have something to vote on, to get it moving, to get the ball moving, so that they can, kind of make everything go bad for other states in the South. But they needed one case, and that was the case that they had for the GOP and the Republican Party. So they have that case now, and now they're trying to make every other case in the states, in the southern states, just piggyback off the Callais case. And so that's the biggest issue that we have going on now, instead of them piggybacking off of Milligan v. Allen and Castor v. Allen. I would have thought that they would have used Milligan and Castor case for Louisiana to help Louisiana, get their congressional seats and have everything set in place for the minorities to have someone to represent them of their choice. But that was not the case. They're actually trying to do it in reverse.
What is crazy to me, again, Evan, is this schizophrenic Supreme Court, where this is the same Supreme Court that ruled in the Alabama case, that ruled in the Louisiana case. That was just a couple of years ago. And now all of a sudden, the Callais lawsuit, that just somehow makes a huge difference. I mean, it's insane. It's like, okay, we lost Alabama, we lost Louisiana. Now let's go back, come up with a whole new one. Supreme Court says, oh yeah, we'll grant you this one.
And, I certainly can't speculate about what's going on with the Supreme Court justices. I know that the conversation we're having now started at least in 2013 with their ruling on the Shelby versus Holder decision. And then now 13 years later, there's a contradiction of what was said in that case, because in Shelby versus Holder, Justice Roberts wrote, we don't really need Section 4 and 5 because we have Section 2. And then 13 years later, they raised the standard for Section 2 so that only the most exceptional cases where intentional discrimination is documented by the offenders do you actually have a conversation about relief. And what's ironic is Alabama is presenting the very exceptional case that this newly raised standard for Section 2 has created. And I think, I can't speculate on what's going on the Supreme Court, but I know for some of our state officials here in Alabama, they have always had an animus for those Reconstruction amendments, for the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. And that's not a new animus. That's an animus that's been multi-generational. And I think it wouldn't be too far of a speculation to guess that, they're hoping that the court will be receptive to reconsidering how the 14th Amendment is used. And that's something that all of your viewers, all people concerned about African-American rights, human rights, democracy, freedom, citizenship in the United States should be concerned about.
I love how in the order, the judges, go to my iPad, the judges go, these long-running congressional redistricting cases have returned to us after another trip to the Supreme Court. In earlier rulings, the Supreme Court affirmed our first preliminary injunction and declined to stay our second. They said, more recently, the Supreme Court received appeals of our order permanently enjoining Alabama from implementing its 2023 Congressional Districting Plan, which we concluded violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and intentionally discriminated against black voters based on race in violation of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. While those appeals were pending, the Supreme Court issued Louisiana versus Callais, which updated the standard for proving a Section 2 claim. It then vacated our permanent injunction and instructed us to give these cases further consideration in light of Callais. We now face a critical decision on a very tight timeline. We can either allow the Secretary of State to administer Alabama's 2026 elections with a legislatively enacted redistricting plan that we found, after a full trial, intentionally discriminated against black voters based on race in violation of the Constitution, or we can issue a preliminary injunction 2.5 months ahead of Alabama's scheduled special primaries and some 5 months before the general election, requiring the Secretary to administer the 2026 elections with the race-blind plan that he used on orders from us and the Supreme Court for Alabama's 2024 elections and May 19th, 2026 primary elections. We emphasize that because of the exceptional public importance of this matter, we carefully reviewed the extensive evidentiary record in these cases with fresh eyes in light of Callais. After that exacting review, we conclude that a preliminary injunction must issue. Ultimately, we cannot see our way clear to requiring Alabamians to cast their votes in the 2026 elections under a districting plan tainted by intentional race-based discrimination. And under the unusual circumstances of this case, we conclude that a limited order requiring the Secretary to continue using this court's race-blind map will not disrupt Alabama's elections. All candidates ran under the race-blind map until 15 days ago, and all voters remain districted under the race-blind map in electoral computer systems. I mean, this right, just Marcus, is just flat out.
It's right there.
Just saying point blank, here's the deal.
Point blank. Right. Right. It's saying it right there. And that's the thing that, you know, when you go on social media and you see different people, you know, well, when was the last time black people couldn't vote? You know, and thinking that we're talking about blacks can't vote. They're not understanding the fact when we talk about delusion of our votes and our voice. And then it's in Alabama, a three-panel judge specifically said that discriminatory, okay, in the maps. I mean, what else do you need? I mean, how many times, I think this is the third time maybe, with the same judges, and then it goes up to the Supreme Court. Even the Supreme rules it in our favor, and Alabama comes back again because of Callais. Come on, I mean, it's there, and the writing is on the wall, and we want our representation, someone of our choosing. And right now we have Congresswoman Terry Sewell, and we have Congressman Shamari Figures. And the state of Alabama, we definitely need this, and we want to be, you know, to set examples for other states. You know, we want Louisiana to get theirs. We want everything to happen in Georgia, in Tennessee, what they have going on, in Florida, you know, South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi. We want every last one of those other states to, you know, to look at our cases and then to see that, hey, look what the judges said. Look what the three panels said. Now, I understand that the lower courts, it might not affect the other states, but what the Supreme Court said, you know, that holds a lot of weight, and it should continue to hold a lot of weight. And we know that, you know, Alabama is going back to the Supreme Court. We'll be headed back to the Supreme Court. But hey, Roland, we're here. We're ready to fight. You know, we know what we're up against here in the state of Alabama. So this is nothing new to us, and we're definitely going to continue to get out and get voter registration going and make sure that our people get out and vote, because we have to have representation for black and brown people here in the South. And Evan, it's just that simple.
And Evan, here's the deal. These are not Clinton, Obama, Biden appointed judges.
No.
These three judges are Republican appointed judges.
Yeah, exactly. That should be said. Three Republican judges.
It's not a stance that they were excited to be, you know, they weren't looking for a case to have an advocacy moment. They weren't chasing the legacy of those justices related to the civil rights. I think they were just there to follow the rule of law according to their interpretation. And even though they came from a more conservative lineage, for them, the state's behavior, you see the language, it's unusual. And they use that term so many times, not only throughout this opinion, but we've been before this court and for this case, and then also a state Senate map case, which has some slightly different plaintiffs, but very similar language coming from these judges when they review these cases. And I think it goes back to, what Dr. Castor was just saying about all of our efforts to encourage our neighbors to vote and all of the things that happened 2 weeks ago when we gathered in Montgomery for All Roads Lead to the South, all of the advocacy that these organizations are doing around the country to remind us of this inheritance that we've received from previous generations, the blood they shed to give us the opportunity to vote. And that is critical work that's a part of our culture. And also, we have a government that has essentially forecasted that they may not even certify the outcome of the November elections. And so I think that, our organizations and at our family tables, at our churches, our mosques, at our fraternal halls, at, all of the different civic groups we're a part of, formally or informally, we need to really be thinking about what we are doing at the local level to prepare ourselves for a moment where the outcome of our votes may not even be recognized. And people's assemblies are great spaces to have those conversations. For anyone that's interested in that, there's going to be a large assembly gathering in Tunica, Mississippi next year. You can learn more about that if you Google Assembly of Assemblies, Tunica, Mississippi. Because those are spaces where we can talk not only about the importance of voting, but about mutual aid, about learning survival skills, about how we can show up for each other in the good, bad, worst case, best case scenarios.
Absolutely. Well, the fight continues. And gentlemen, we appreciate your efforts when it comes to this battle. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, folks, we're going to talk about with our panel this GOP war on Black America. Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice with the EPA, joining us from D.C. Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney out of L.A. Brian Shapiro, host of Pushing the Limits radio show. Glad to have all three of you here. Joe, I want to start with you. I mean, this is the battle. The legal fight continues in the courts. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting because Alabama, actually, with this three-judge panel, they've been getting it right. And they're basically saying, keep the map that you had 2 years ago, that was put in place 2 years ago, because that's what needed to happen. And so all of these folks are responding very, very quickly to the Callais case in all of these states, Tennessee, Louisiana, et cetera. They're trying to undo things. So let's hurry up. And in doing so, proving why Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act was so important. But, I digress. But this court clearly says, and what it seems to be saying is that even at this higher standard that the Supreme Court sets, this case meets it. And so, therefore, it shouldn't be undone. It should be kept the way that it is. And they were able to find and show the states operating in all of their hypocrisy. We'll talk about South Carolina later, but the whole idea that they would step to do this so quickly when not too long ago, they knew several months was not enough time to make sure that they did this to ensure fairness in situations where people were getting ready to vote, where voting was imminent, et cetera. And it's clear that this is discriminatory. It's clear. You can't just do this and just have a wink, wink. Oh, it's not discriminatory. It's political. But it happens to disenfranchise Black people. For as many Black people as we would just have one seat instead of two, which is crazy. So there's still the Supreme Court. So let's see what the Supreme Court does, because really the Supreme Court has been inconsistent itself. And to your point that was made a little bit earlier, these are not liberal judges. Okay, so let's see if the Supreme Court is pragmatic enough to overcome judges that apparently think like them. Somehow these super conservative judges got it right. Let's see if the Supreme Court steps on itself and is inconsistent once again.
This is what Mother Jones published, Mustafa. They said, Tuesday's decision from the three-judge panel, however, takes Callais at its word. Step by step, it lays out why the Alabama map fails under Supreme Court precedent, the VRA, and the Constitution. It repeatedly reminds readers that the Supreme Court agreed with their finding in Allen v. Milligan that Alabama had violated the VRA and that Callais claimed not to have upset that opinion. If the Supreme Court meant to use Callais to end all claims of anti-black racial discrimination and gerrymandering, the panel effectively sends the case back to the High Court and tells them, do your dirty work yourself.
I mean, that's powerful, and that's exactly what it is. It's like the Supreme Court says one thing on Monday and then something else different on Thursday. And they're saying it also, so we got to remember the fact, right? What is it? Alabama's 27% black, 1.3 million folks are being disenfranchised when you play around and don't have fair maps. That's what's really going on. So I'm glad that their court said, you know what, y'all need to take this back. And if we know what we said, we know what we feel, we know how we have interpreted it, and we know that it's racist. And you know that it is too, but we're not going to carry the water for you. But of course, the impact, though, is that when folks don't have the opportunity to be able to be represented by individuals who actually know their communities and care about their communities, of course, resource distribution never makes it for all the critical programs that are so necessary for all of us who have ever worked on the ground. So, yes, today was a reprieve, if we will, but we know that the fight continues.
Court is saying is we'll fully protect the voting rights of white people, but damn black folks.
You know, Roland, this is the history of the Republican Party. Let's just be honest with ourselves here. 93% of black women voted against Donald Trump. 80% of black men did not vote for Donald Trump either. The more minorities that have a voice, the more scared Republicans get, because the history of the party, they're represented by what? Less than 1% of black people are represented, elected officials within the Republican Party. So listen, I'm glad these judges got it right. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I don't have a lot of faith in the conservative stacked Supreme Court right now. I hope they make the correct ruling. I'm fearful, but let's wait and see how it goes. But listen, guys, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Let's see what happens here before the midterms. But Republicans understand that it's going to be a bloodbath for them. They're going to play dirty tricks. They're going to do everything they can do to try to make sure that they can remain in power. Hopefully it doesn't work, but we'll have to see where the cards fall where they may. Again, I'm glad that these judges made the correct decision. We'll have to wait and see what the Supreme Court does on this one. But as I said before, and I'll say again, the more minorities in this country that have a voice, the less power that the Republican Party will have. That's just a fact, and it's based on history.
Absolutely, folks. In South Carolina, the Republican-led Senate failed to advance a new congressional map, halting the redistricting process for now and leaving the next steps uncertain. The motion to end debate, which failed with a vote of 20-24, was a surprise rejection of Donald Trump. Now keep in mind, okay, the same Republicans in the Senate joined with Democrats to block it in the last session. The governor called a special session. Well, and this White House really pushed them hard, and it was a White House consultant who drew the maps. And here's what's also insane. Y'all, it was a 7-minute and 40-second discussion. This person said, not taking any questions, no questions, and said, oh, I got somewhere else to go when I'm done here. And so these Republicans said they were offended when they said they normally had a process that took a hell of a lot longer when it came to the redrawing of their maps. And so what you see here, and let me be real clear, these Republicans are also not dumb. So go ahead and show the map. So you see that one blue, that's Congressman Jim Clyburn. They want it all red. Republicans in South Carolina, they showing they ain't stupid, because South Carolina greatly depends on federal aid. And these Republicans are scared to death that if you screw over Jim Clyburn and a Democrat wins in 2028, South Carolina is going to experience FAFO. And they're like, yeah, we're not that stupid, so we're not going to sit here and screw that over. We benefit from a Congressman Jim Clyburn and his seniority in Congress. And not only that, here's what their other concern is. If you then begin to destroy his district, where are you going to stand on those black voters? You're going to have 20, 25% black voters in different Republican districts. They're scared they're going to lose more seats. So they were like, nah, Donald Trump, you can kiss our ass. We good. We're going to leave that map just like it is. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about the NAACP. They're laid out how they want black athletes and others to say no to going to these predominantly white schools in southern states that are denying black folks the right to vote. Why is this so hard, and why are people so confused on this? Sports journalist Howard Bryant is going to join me next to break it all down. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
They've been trying to erase black political power since Reconstruction. Now the Supreme Court is helping them finish the job. First came Shelby County versus Holder in 2013, the ruling that gutted the Voting Rights Act. Then came Brnovich in 2021, another ruling, another piece torn away. Now comes Callais, the case civil rights leaders warned could cripple the last major federal protection against racial vote dilution, and within days, Tennessee eliminated its only majority black congressional district. Louisiana, South Carolina, Alabama. The same strategy is spreading across the South. The old Jim Crow used poll taxes and literacy tests. The new Jim Crow uses gerrymandered maps, voter roll purges, polling place closures, and court rulings that make black communities politically invisible. 1965 was Freedom Summer. This is Freedom Summer 2.0, because they are still trying to erase black political power, and we will not bow.
I'm Mark Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League, and I'm watching the Black Star Network.
Folks, let's talk about the NAACP's call when it comes to athletes and protesting, not going to these predominantly white institutions. Now, it's been really interesting, and I've been in chat groups, and people have been texting me. They're like, oh, I don't understand what the NAACP is doing. This is not a good idea. I mean, why are we getting in the way of these young men securing the bag, and on and on and on. Then, oh my God, there was this one article that was the most insane thing I read, where this one black journalist goes, well, why are we asking these young people to do this? As if we don't have a history of young black people being involved for fighting for rights of black people. Like, I don't understand what in the hell she was reading. Howard Bryant, sports journalist, author of numerous books, Henry Aaron on black athletes protesting, of course, Ricky Henderson, latest book on Paul Robeson and Jackie Robinson. Yes, it's in my backpack. Joins me right now. So, Howard, just give us your overall view of this NAACP call, because it's not just about the athletes. It's saying to alumni and others, don't support, don't watch, don't buy product, don't give money. It's a detailed plan, but listen to some of these people. You swear it's like, oh my God, you know, they're saying these black kids shouldn't get education, as if you're a top athlete, like if you're being recruited by Alabama or Texas A&M or South Carolina or Florida. Not like the Big Ten ain't trying to recruit you too.
Yeah, that's right. It's really interesting. I think that one of the things that kind of struck me that was happening is that I think people have forgotten the totality of the fight. I think that I think that the argument that, oh, well, you're not supposed to have these young students or you're asking too much of them. One, it's ahistorical, as you said, but also I think it's something else. And that is, I think that there has been such an overestimation of money. That this idea that these kids are, let them secure their bag, let them get their money, and there's nothing that can stand in the way of that. And I think that what that does is it doesn't pay any attention to, one, the historical struggle or the present one. Those, most of those kids have a lot of leverage. They're not kids. They are incredibly powerful members of a 10 to 12 billion, or if you add in the NFL, a $30 billion industry. And they have power. And all the questions that we have been, whenever you're trying to do any sort of political strategizing, where's the leverage and how can you use it? So I thought that it was fascinating that I think that I think we're rusty. That's what I think. I think that people are also not paying anywhere near close enough attention to the state that we're in. And I just think that it was a very interesting reaction to something that I didn't think was controversial at all.
I also think, Howard, we are in a period where it's really about self. It's about you, self and I. Get yours. How dare you ask of them? I mean, I've heard people say, well, why isn't the NAACP telling professional athletes? Well, first of all, professional athletes, those are not state schools. We're talking here about state legislators, governors who are making decisions, and the schools, Texas A&M, Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Florida State, South Carolina, Georgia, University of Tennessee. These are all state schools. There's a reason why they're targeting state schools. Clemson.
Well, 100%, and that's also, which is an ACC school, and so I don't think the NAACP went far enough. I think where there are a couple of areas here where I think is worthy of discussion. One is always going to be tactics. I think this sort of came out of the blue for a lot of people, and I think I'm not sure. I'm doing some reporting on it right now, but I just don't think that there was enough scaffolding. You want, when you, as the great Dr. Harry Edwards would say, that's his phrase that I have borrowed over and over again, you do need scaffolding to create your movement. You need people to understand what it's about and why. You also need your test cases. You need to find the number of people who are willing to go forward with you. And so I think that, the one criticism that I think was valid was this sort of got sprung upon everybody instead of really being meticulous in the movement building. And so I think taking people by surprise is a little difficult there. I think the other thing, too, is you're right. Your initial point was we live in a time of complete nihilism. I think people have quit. I think one of the great journalists, Naomi Klein, talks about disaster capitalism and how people, especially the oligarchies in this world and in this country, have given up on everybody and given up on the world. And I think that there's a lot of people who have bought into that. And so I'm just going to get mine and do my thing. And that is my definition of success. But that is also not something new. That's something that has been building, for the past 50 years, this idea that there is no community, this idea that we don't owe anything to each other and that we're not in a common struggle. The argument has been that, oh, well, this is just a desperate attempt by the NAACP and by Democrats to show some level of fight. And I think that the issue here is that this is not about politics. This is about what is happening to Black people in this country right now. Everybody, it's an all hands on deck thing. And I feel like one of the real difficulties in these conversations have been these sort of straw arguments that athletes, that these teenagers are being asked all by themselves to carry a movement, and they're not. They're just an extremely important economic piece of it. And we also know, too, that if there is one thing we know, it's that economic boycotts work. They are effective. And if you are going to take something of value and affect it, people pay attention. And nothing is more important to those regions than college football.
Yep.
You are getting their attention, which is exactly what a movement's supposed to do. It's like when the players were kneeling. It's like, well, what are you kneeling here for? Because this is where people are paying attention. So you do need, what I would like to see more of, and I think you're going to have to see it for this to just not be a blip of a news story, is real organizing and real articulation, not just to the athletes, but to the parents.
Yep.
And the argument that people are going to say, well, why are you taking this money from these kids? Well, you're not. If there's money in Alabama, there's money at Oregon. There's money in Wisconsin. There's money in Michigan.
Yeah.
If you're a top 20, top 30, top 40 recruit, you're not going to lose anything. You might actually gain more.
Absolutely. This is the whole thing is called, the NAACP calls it out of bounds college athletics. They have a whole toolkit. Come on, go to my iPad. Let's go. So you got it right here. See it right here. And it lays out the schools. It lays out the demands, what the campaign is, and it calls about getting involved. And I think you're right. You're absolutely right. The groundwork was not laid, and that should have happened. There were critical people. I know there were conversations that took place because, but it was because I was on one of the calls. But it should have been far more expansive, and it should have been. And I think part of this whole thing was you had this week that took place where it went from an idea to planning the day of action in Montgomery, and it was like, well, let's drop ours soon after. But you need to actually build this whole thing up. So you're absolutely right about that. I'm sitting here wearing this shirt. They gave it to me when I was in Montgomery, and good trouble. And that was, of course, the great comment from Congressman John Lewis. John Lewis was 19. John Lewis was 19 years old. Okay,
when
he was getting his head bashed in. This week, you also had the Freedom Riders. You had the Freedom Riders, and you have these Freedom Riders who were college students who were going down Mississippi and Alabama. You had SNCC, you had CORE. We could go on and on and on. So this notion that young people were involved is crazy. But we don't have to go back that far. Go to my iPad. Kylan Hill, running back, Mississippi State. That young man said, I'm not playing under that flag. He tweeted that, Howard, it was like June 20th. Of 2020. 10 days later. Okay, let me help people out. 10 days later, Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi, signed into law that Confederate emblem off that flag. Why? Because when Kylan Hill, one black player, tweeted that, other black players spoke up. Then white coaches went, oh, shit. We're not going to be able to get black ball players. And those white coaches and some of those black athletes went to the state capitol. And they met with violent, racist, Republican legislators, people who celebrate Jefferson Davis's birthday in Mississippi. And they said, hey, man, y'all need to get rid of this emblem or we in trouble. 10 days. But let me help the people who are watching and listening. What y'all don't know is the NAACP, for a very long time, had organized a boycott of Mississippi. The NAACP stopped Mississippi and South Carolina from being able to hold any NCAA type tournament because of that Confederate flag. That had been going on 2 or 3 decades. I remember we covered a protest here in D.C. When actress Ingenue Ellis was involved with the protest of the boycott against that flag. So they had been boycotting that flag for decades, Howard. When one black football player tweeted that, it took 10 days to bring them to their knees. I'm trying to understand why folk act like that never happened.
Because I think people have lost their way, and I think that people have not, and I understand it in some ways, Roland, because we've been taught over and over again, or not taught necessarily, told that there is no more racism and that there is nothing to fight about and that there is nothing to protect. We're also being told that at a time when things are actively being taken from us. And when I say things being taken from us, I'm talking about your simple dignity of having a job and being told that your job is simply the byproduct, that you were given something through DEI or some other nonsense, that you were somehow the beneficiary of something free, when we know that we have to work extremely hard to do anything. And so I think that you're looking at a group of people in some senses who need to sharpen the edges. And I'm talking about us. The edges need to resharpen. And also, I think that the one area where you do have this, and Muhammad Ali was what, 20, 21? So, I mean, all of the things. When the thing about Black people in sports, and, you and I have been talking about this for years, is that, we're 12.5% of the national population, but we're not 12% of the culture. And so when you take some of the areas where we are at our strongest, where that leverage really is, sports is at the top of it. Yep. And people will respond to it. And you have to have something that people care about to get their attention. And if you can't handle that, then you're not about it. But you need to be about it. And those kids, those athletes who, have an opportunity to do so many things, they're going to be adults and parents, and they have parents and they have grandparents. So it's not just about you. And the other thing too is, if you have that sort of leverage, if you are a LeBron James, or if you're some top 10 recruit who has a chance to go to Alabama, or has a chance to go to Clemson, or a chance to go to South Carolina, or whatever, right? I mean, the level of power that you have is supposed to, or the level of money you're going to have, is supposed to also translate into power. What good is the money if you have no agency? We talk about athlete activism and all of these things, but what good is any of it if you lose everything? This is the time, and also from an athletic standpoint, as Black citizens, a lot of these athletes are never going to have more political power and more political leverage than they have right now. So if you say, oh, well, we shouldn't do this for these, we shouldn't let them carry it, they'll never be in a better position to carry it than right now.
Like it is astonishing. It is astonishing to me when we talk about this. And again, people act as if math didn't exist. They act as if we don't recall facts. We don't recall what happened. I mean, listen, we all know, and I've had the pleasure of meeting both of them, when Tommy Smith and John Carlos in Mexico City, 1968, stood on that podium, shoes off, Black power fists raised with black gloves on. Let me just remind people, they were 22 and 23 years old.
That's right.
So I'm just trying to, we can literally walk, you just said it, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar refused to represent the United States in that Olympic Games.
And he was 21.
Again, you go before that, to your point, Ali, what his age was. We can just walk through this stuff, and I'm just sitting there going, I've seen even some activists and radio hosts and journalists, and I'm going, do any of y'all read?
Well, I think people don't feel like there is a need to sacrifice anything. Like I said, we're in a nihilistic time. And not only are we in a nihilistic time, but where people get their information is also under serious assault. You're not getting a lot of the voices, part of what you're seeing right now.
Yep.
And this is a comprehensive assault. It's an assault from the courts, it's an assault from the Congress, and it's also an assault from the airways, from the media, from what you're getting. So these types of discussions aren't even taking place in the public space. So one of the areas, which is why, of course, this show is so essential as well, but one of the things that has to happen, and it has to either happen behind closed doors or publicly, or preferably both, that there has to be a massive re-education, a reminder of where we are and who we are. And we know this. I mean, look at all the athletes. Talk to any of the athletes, whether they're college or professional. They are constantly being told, one, to separate from their community, that they don't have a community, and also that because of their phenomenal talent, they don't have any problems, that they're disconnected from what's taking place.
Right.
And yet we all know that to be untrue, because one of the great players in the world who supposedly had it all and then didn't have anything was Colin Kaepernick. So when we think about all of these players, we think about where they are. It's incredibly instructive to remember that the leverage that you're going to have is finite, but you are never going to be disconnected from your community, because your family members are going to be voters who can't get to a polling station, that their votes are going to be diluted. It's happening to them. And that was one of the areas where people got really upset during Ferguson and the Trayvon Martin and the Tamir Rice years, because the Black athletes were having agency because they were directly from those communities. Carmelo Anthony's from Baltimore, West Baltimore. He understood it. So I think the key for me right now is what has taken place behind closed doors, that there's an opportunity right now to build that scaffolding that Dr. Harry Edwards always talks about. There's a movement that needs to be built, and now is the time to build it. Otherwise, if that scaffolding is not erected,
right, then
it's all going to just disappear, because nobody will know what exactly they're fighting for. There's not going to be an articulation of what's taking place.
Yeah, and let's not forget, when we talk about racism with Donald Sterling and the Clippers, you had players who like, yo, we ain't playing. Remember?
And by the way, Roland, not to interrupt you, I apologize for this too, but let us also not forget that next month is June. It's the 10th anniversary of Muhammad Ali's death. It's going to be the 10th, in August is going to be the 10th anniversary of Kaepernick taking a knee. It wasn't that long ago. Right? I mean, these movements and these questions about where we are as people, it feels like it was 50 years ago.
Right.
It wasn't.
Well, look, in April was the 10th anniversary of Prince's death. They're going to a big celebration at Paisley Park next month in June. Let's remember when he was against Warner, writing slave on his face, when he was talking about, again, the economic realities, folks who put it on the line. I mean, just listen, the Supreme Court refused to bow down to the NFL. Brian Flores is moving forward with his lawsuit against the NFL, and he clearly is not trying to settle. He is suing 3 teams. They requested 1,000 pages from some, from 25 other teams as well. He clearly, Howard, wants to go to court. He's not trying to do what Kaepernick did, who actually settled. He is like, and I mean, luckily, he got hired by the Steelers. Then he became the defensive coordinator, top defense for the Minnesota Vikings. He's still getting paid, but he wants to go to court to expose the NFL. And so, and Steve Wilkes is also a part of it. So thank God that this is a guy who didn't take the easy way out by saying, okay, fine, let's do a settlement. No, it's clear he don't want to settle.
Well, because he knows it's not about him. He knows that what's really taking place is, the number of ways that these conversations have been distorted. They've been misdirected, in that the reason why there's a Rooney Rule, or was, or continues to be, or the reason why there are all of these different rules taking place or taking shape, is because we know that corporate America, whether we're talking about the NFL or whether we're talking about Apple, they don't hire Black people in any real numbers. So that's why these things are in place. It's not to give Black people something that everybody else has to work for. But when you see that level of distortion and you don't fight the distortion, then you're so far behind. And I just feel like we're in this moment right now where I think we as people, all of us, but Black people especially, because we're the ones deeper in the bullseye, I think our claws aren't sharp enough. And I think people have thought that having a 65-inch TV means you're okay, and you're not okay.
I think you nailed it, and the reality is what the NAACP is calling for. There's more work to do, but this is where I keep saying where we have to be using our organizational heft to be able to do these things, to call for these things. It got lots of attention. Now the work is after this, and this is where other groups have to step in as well. Listen, the Congressional Black Caucus held a news conference today urging corporate America to reaffirm its commitment to voting rights and to stand up using their power. They sent letters to companies in response.
Let's not forget, when we talk about this too, back the last time we saw any flicker of athlete movement was in 2020 with Jacob Blake during the shutdown. And what did the athletes do? What did the pros do during that pause when Naomi Osaka decided she wasn't going to play in the Cincinnati tournament, Western and Southern? They went to Barack Obama and he told them to go back to work. And he told them to be citizens. And one of the things that they did in being citizens was to really push for voting registration. Remember when they had, the Milwaukee Bucks did this big voting drive. And so suddenly all of these things, these dots all connect. And so you were told to be citizens. The players were citizens. The players, they leaned in more deeply to the democracy. And then the pieces of that democracy are also still under assault. So the players, whether it be college, pro, whatever, they're not disconnected from this. And once again, this is a good example of that scaffolding. I certainly hope the NAACP is talking, to find those test-cased athletes and their families who are willing to do this. And I hope that they're also talking to some of those schools, whether it's Washington or Oregon or USC or UCLA, to go find landing spots for these guys to create a comprehensive movement strategy.
Well, I know I saw where the SEC hired my fellow Houstonian, Jarvis Stewart, to assist them with their crisis management over this.
Well, you get their attention. Like that's going to get your attention. And I think people have forgotten the definition of leverage, even though leverage is being used against them every single day.
You're absolutely right. And so folks got to realize this is all hands on deck. This is not a moment where you can act as individuals. This is why it's important to be part of organizations to stand with you. And I had a very prominent media personality hit me up saying that they just didn't get it. And I said, this is what you're not understanding. Y'all are talking in the aggregate. I'm not saying you're going to get every athlete on the ESPN 300. But let me be clear.
You don't need them. All you need is a half dozen.
I said if you said one or two, I said, I'm telling you, if one or two ball players say, I'm not going to these schools because of voting rights, I said, it is going to send a shudder through college athletics. And it's just, and when I'm trying to expand it beyond, listen, when Texas A&M screwed over Kathleen McElroy, a sports journalist, a graduate of Texas A&M, who wanted to come back and run the journalism department, and these Republicans on the Board of Regents said, "Oh no, she supported DEI," and Bill Mahomes, the black board chair at the time, allowed them to stand it. They had to pay her $1 million settlement for it. I sat there and said, black athletes, well, they want your labor on Saturdays, but they don't want you to have a job once you graduate. And so
let's not forget that it was, when Missouri, when the ball players in 2015, when they decided to join the campus protest at the University of Missouri, what happened? The president and the chancellor of the university system both quit because they were going to lose $1 million a game if Missouri didn't play.
And they lost. A lot of folks didn't apply for the school. Donations dropped. It was several years before they actually recovered from that. And although Missouri is not on the NAACP list, they also racially gerrymandered and got rid of Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver's district there in Kansas City. And so that needs to be understood as
Another
well.
SEC team.
There you go. Howard Bryant, I appreciate it, my brother. Thanks a bunch. And folks, don't forget, hold on. Okay, y'all don't have the graphic. Don't worry about it. Just stay with me right here. Yep, don't worry about it, y'all. I got it. Don't worry about it. All right, I got it in here. And so if y'all have not seen my interview with Howard, also get the book. His new book is Kings and Pawns, Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson in America. It is a fantastic book. Trust me, it is one that you want to get. Howard, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Real quick, I know I got Ambassador Andrew Young coming up, and I quickly want to go to my panel. Bottom line is, Mustafa, this is all hands on deck, and we need everybody involved in this. And you know, this is not a matter of saying, well, you may just go and get your paper. This is way bigger. We're talking about the impact of millions of black people.
Yeah, you know, it goes to that quote that I always share with folks, that you have power unless you give it away. It is about the education. It is about us making sure that we have the organizing with both our large organizations and individuals feeding into those. It is about also making sure that we are supporting each other. And if we do those types of things, we have huge leverage. But unfortunately, in our country, we are not taught about power. And we're definitely not taught that black folks or brown folks actually have the power to actually shift things and to make change happen, even though historically we know that it has happened. So, you know, whether it's this show or other opportunities for folks to get educated and then to dive deeper, you've got to do that, because you've got to get prepared for this moment that we're dealing with.
Joe?
We have to say what needs to be said, for sure. And so I agree with all of that. I wonder aloud, and have for a long time, whether this generation's kids have the strategy that the Andrew Youngs and the Martin Kings had as teenagers and into their early 20s. If they do, you know, we can be where we need to be. Just like you said, not a lot of people have to do this, but if a bunch of them did do it, it would make an enormous, enormous difference.
Brian?
It's almost like I expect MAGA Republicans to call some of these black athletes sons of bitches again, the way Donald Trump did with Colin Kaepernick and so many African Americans that were taking a knee. I would say this to these universities. I would say this to this area. Treat everybody as equals, and then this stuff doesn't happen. Good luck to these college football programs and these college basketball programs when you have a bunch of talented young black men that decide not to go to these universities, because that's ultimately what's going to happen here unless things change. So I think they're going about it the right way, and I completely support it.
All right, folks. Quick break. When we come back, we'll remember the life and legacy of Clarence Jones, who was an attorney for Dr. King, a strategic advisor, and someone who lived an absolutely full life. He passed away on Friday at the age of 95. We will talk with Ambassador Andrew Young next about his longtime friend and colleague. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
They've been trying to erase black political power since Reconstruction. Now the Supreme Court is helping them finish the job. First came Shelby County versus Holder in 2013, the ruling that gutted the Voting Rights Act. Then came Brnovich in 2021, another ruling, another piece torn away. Now comes Callais, the case civil rights leaders warned could cripple the last major federal protection against racial vote dilution. And within days, Tennessee eliminated its only majority black congressional district. Louisiana, South Carolina, Alabama. The same strategy is spreading across the South. The old Jim Crow used poll taxes and literacy tests. The new Jim Crow uses gerrymandered maps, voter roll purges, polling place closures, and court rulings that make black communities politically invisible. 1965 was Freedom Summer. This is Freedom Summer 2.0, because they are still trying to erase black political power, and we will not bow.
What's up? It's Talib Kweli. I'm CEO. This is the Black Star Network.
The man who helped Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. organize the 1963 March in Washington for Jobs and Freedom, also assisted in drafting that iconic speech, Clarence Jones has passed away. He died on Friday at the age of 95. He was an attorney, close advisor to King. He passed away at a California assisted living facility. From 1960 to 1968, he served as King's legal counsel and strategic advisor, advising him on critical decisions during the Black Freedom Movement. Not only that, he went on, he was of course a major force when it came to the Attica uprising. Took place in 1971, negotiating with those prisoners and dealing with Governor Nelson Rockefeller. Of course, he worked on Wall Street, did all sorts of different things. Later in life, he was a professor, he was a lecturer, he was speaker. He was involved in an ad campaign last year, the Super Bowl, when it came to Black-Jewish relations. And so many different things he did. He was a friend as well. I had an opportunity. I knew he was transitioning, had an opportunity to FaceTime with him a week before he passed, and he always encouraged me. He always showed love and appreciation. I was honored to be one of his invited guests when he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Joe Biden. We'll show you some of that as well. Joining us right now is Ambassador Andrew Young from Atlanta. Ambassador, always good to see you, my dear Alpha brother. But before we talk about Clarence, we were just talking about the NAACP and calling on athletes to stand up and boycott. We see what's happening with voting rights. The CBC is saying, corporations, you need to be standing with us on this issue as well. I mean, you know this stuff. You lived this stuff. You understood Bob Brown and SCLC and Operation Breadbasket and the sort of pressure. And so I just wanted you to share your thoughts on what the NAACP is calling on young athletes to say, don't go to these Southern white schools, take your talents elsewhere, and all of this energy you're now seeing Black folks mobilizing and organizing when it comes to keeping our Black political power.
Well, you know, I applaud what the NAACP is doing, but it's going to be a serious problem, more serious now than ever before, because there's so much money in the game that quarterbacks now easily get $1 million a year to play football. And it's going to be hard to match that. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't try. But I really would, I think that was a case where I felt that the threat was more powerful than the action, because the deck is really stacked against us. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for these young men to make choices to turn down that kind of money because they've never had it before. And it's going to be a hard thing to sell, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Now, I think pointing back to where this started, Bear Bryant was a coach at Alabama, and they played Penn State. And the halfback at Penn State ran all over him. And he came back to Alabama well beaten and said, if we're going to play this game, we got to have speed. And I don't care what color it is. And that's when they opened up their doors and began to realize that it wasn't the same game when it was segregated. Now, you can call for something in public, but with this, you have to sit down with the NCAA. They're going to hate it, but you've got to talk to key alumni, and it's got to be a real campaign. It can't just be an announcement. And I think that universities have been hit hard by this administration. And I think that they may be getting ready to stand up in some way.
Well, we certainly hope so. And speaking of standing up, in talking to Clarence and reading his book, he was an extremely successful lawyer. Dr. King goes out to L.A. And heard about him, wanted to meet with him. And he met with him, and he basically wanted him to join the movement. And he was like, all this money I'm making? No, I got other things I'm doing. So he invites him to his speech, and he goes to the speech. And Clarence writes, is it as if MLK was looking and talking directly to him in that room, and he convicted him to join the movement, and that's exactly what he did.
And you know, Clarence was the one who called me when I was in New York and working with the National Council of Churches. And he called me to say that Dr. King is beginning to plan to move back to Atlanta, and he's looking for a staff. Would I be interested? And I said, well, I'm settled here now. I just bought a house. But then the Nashville sit-in story came on, and my wife and I were sitting there looking at it. And after the first intermission, she stood up and said, I'm ready to go home. I said, we just bought this house. You're home. This is Queens, New York. And she said, no, I can never call New York home. She said, I'm going back where they are. And she pointed at the television, and she was talking about John Lewis and James Bevel and Diane Nash and the Nashville sit-in story. And she said, look, you can forget it. As soon as I get this, she was getting a master's, and she was pregnant. She said, as soon as I deliver this baby and get this master's degree, I'm heading back to my mama in Alabama. That was Marion, Alabama, right next to Selma. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? She said, I want you to sell this house, quit this job, and find a way to join me. And shortly after that, I got a call from Clarence. And he was explaining to me the difficulties that Dr. King was having in moving back to Atlanta. And I said I'd be glad to help. So I have been, that was 1961. And I ended up selling the house, packing my bags, and coming back to Atlanta.
What we hear folks who work with Dr. King, and of course we've known and heard your name over the years, and Reverend Jackson and Ralph Abernathy, and again Bevel and Nash and James Orange and others. But the lawyers played a huge role in what y'all were doing. How critical was Clarence Jones in this?
Well, Clarence Jones was very critical because he was there first. And he brought in the Legal Defense Fund of the NAACP. And it was just after while Thurgood Marshall was making the transition to the courts. And in fact, the whole NAACP Legal Defense Fund moved to Alabama with us in 1963 to fight the cases in relationship to 1963 Freedom Summer. We didn't make a move without the lawyers.
He also, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I said that it made the difference between life in prison and a misdemeanor.
He also talked and said that, look, people are like, well, what about getting arrested? He's like, the last people you want getting arrested with you are the lawyers. Somebody got to bail you out of jail.
Well, that's certainly don't want your lawyer in jail with you.
He was, he did play a role, though, because he was smuggling out when Dr. King was in Birmingham, writing on the edges. It was Clarence who was smuggling those writings out of the jail, correct?
Well, let me tell you, I didn't go to jail much either, but I was going in and out of jail every time Dr. King was in jail. But Clarence brought out, well, first he brought in the New York Times, and Martin wrote the letter from the Birmingham jail around the margins of that New York Times. And when he finished it, he sent it out with Clarence, and he didn't quite finish, so he had written on the toilet paper. And he said, "Thank goodness Alabama has tough toilet paper."
And one of the things that I also, look, money was obviously important, and I am still mesmerized by the story of him going to meet with Rockefeller and going into the vault to withdraw a ton of money to bail folks out. And in his book, he said he was nervous as all get out because he had to personally guarantee the money. And he said, man, I had never personally guaranteed that much money in my life. He said, so I had to make sure that money got down south.
Yeah. No, we don't have a slight idea how much the lawyers did. But really, the lawyers who were with us in Birmingham ended up going to Harvard and writing books about civil rights. Thurgood Marshall ended up on the Supreme Court, and he brought a power and a humor exactly opposite of Clarence Thomas. I met Clarence Thomas, and we had him down to Atlanta a long time ago, and he was a great guy, we thought, but he didn't have the power that Thurgood had, and Thurgood really made fun of the opposition by showing how contradictory it was to the Constitution of the United States, and he got along with everybody. And was a great influence on that court. I hope that we will get back to that sometime, but right now, I think everything has to focus on this next election. And it's, well, we've got to turn out the votes. And when I ran for Congress, in 1972, I was in a district that was a minority white black district, and it poured down rain. It was a rainy night in Georgia in 1972, and it rained all day on Election Day and all night till after the polls closed. And I thought, no, the Lord had let me down, but I think it was just priming the people, because we had a 75% black turnout and we got almost 30% of the white vote. And so just because they are reapportioning and because they are eliminating districts, I'm not sure that eliminates black folk from politics, nor that it eliminates, well, we have only recently had black majorities in the mayor's races here in Atlanta, but we've had 9 black mayors in a row because the mayors in the black community that decided to run had worked at it harder. Now, that might not be true next time, but the people who get elected are going to be well, like your mayor in New York there, he's not black, but he sounds as good as anybody I've heard. And the same thing true with the elected officials in Minnesota. They rise up regardless of race, creed, or color, because, well, Martin's quote was, "The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice." And that ends up having to be a faith that you can't get away from.
Want my panelists to ask a question of you. Of course, we're talking about the passing of the great attorney Clarence Jones, passed away on Friday at the age of 95. First up, Mustafa.
Ambassador, it's good to see you. If you had one thing to say to Brother Jones one last time, what would it be?
Well, I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't know that. My understanding was that he kind of got depressed and that he decided that he had run his course and had not eaten for the last 5 days. And I would have tried to get him to hang on because, well, I don't feel no ways tired. I'm 94. And I have a young Indian fellow working in my foundation who comes from Bihar in India, and that's where the Hindus and Buddha found enlightenment. And he said the monks around there say that Moses lived to 120. And they think that part of that is always looking for his responsibility to his people. And they say that in order to live the maximum strength in your life, you have to look forward. Now, I have said that, well, we've said in my organization that we have to plan to live to 129. Moses lived to 120, and God needed him that long. I don't know whether it's possible or not, but I was at the barbershop today, and a lady came up to me well, she had on some nice slacks, and she was looking good, and she wanted to take a picture with me. And I said, I took a picture with you once before, didn't I? She said, yeah, and I like it, and I want another one. And I said, you mind telling me how old you are? She said, no, I'm proud of being 95. I said, damn, I'm just 94. I said, you robbing the cradle.
Joe.
Ambassador, it is so amazing to be on with you for a couple reasons. Not only because you are who you are, but I am the son-in-law of your dear friend, Jim Robinson. And so Paul Moldauer was nice enough to get me your book, An Easy Burden, several years ago. And I thank him for it because I talk to people about this book all the time. Can you talk a bit about strategy? Because the Montgomery boycott, for instance, everything that the movement did, you had an economic component. The city was choked when nobody black rode the bus. You also had a moral component, which is why you acted a certain way and people could not be physically abusive and things like that. Talk a bit about the need for strategy in being successful in movements and trying to create change.
Not just strategy, just preparation. You know, no boxer goes into the ring without months of training. And you can't take, I mean, this is not a criticism because they responded with what they had. But after George Floyd was killed, we all were sent to the streets without stopping to think. And we didn't have a strategy that was as broad and as big as the enthusiasm that we mustered. And so it's one of the things that we're going to be trying to do in Atlanta with different civil rights organizations. And I've been trying to figure out a way that I can keep on being involved without getting on the road and without going around preaching. But we have to think this through. That book, which I did not read, 2025, told us what to expect.
Yep. You mean Project 2025?
Yep.
What's that?
Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's plan for America. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it was ridiculous when I thumbed through it, and I didn't want to read that trash, but it happened. And we're seeing it slowly but surely implemented. And the thought that today my brother in South Carolina might be put out of a seat, I don't know what that means, but I can't imagine that there are not enough white people in South Carolina to say that they want to keep him in the Congress. He is a force. He is a power. And South Carolina, it doesn't matter what color he is, he delivers for South Carolina.
Yes, he does. Yes, sir.
Brian.
And there is a power in having minority congressmen. One of the reasons I was able to do so much with Atlanta is that with Walter Fauntroy and John Lewis, we went out and campaigned for other congressmen. And one of the reasons we were able to get the $900 million for expressways was that I'd gone out and campaigned for the congressman who was in a white majority district, and they added blacks to his district to take away his working class white district, and he didn't know anybody. And so both John Lewis and I went up there and campaigned for him on different weekends. And when it came time for the Democratic Convention to come to Atlanta, he was the president. He was the chairman of that committee on transportation and saw to it that we got the hundreds of millions of dollars that we needed to improve our transportation system. Right now, looks like we're renovating Atlanta because the World Cup is on the way. And we've grown from 500,000 people to close to 5 billion people. And it's been because we've been in the heart of the politics, and almost everybody's been black. But we brought black votes, and we helped to mobilize black votes in their districts, and we were able to be more powerful because we were black. And we knew the preachers, and we'd gone to school with. I remember campaigning for Jimmy Carter down in Florida. He wasn't well known, but Morehouse College gave him an honorary degree. And when he spoke at their commencement, he stood up and he said, "I expect to be the first Morehouse man to be the president of the United States, but I guarantee you I will not be the last." And they wrote a citation there for his honorary doctorate, and every Morehouse man in Florida had read it. And when they called me and said, "Would you go to Florida?" I said, "I don't know many people in Florida." They said, "We'll have it set up, and you just fly around on a plane with us." And everywhere I went, there were Morehouse College men who had gathered people from their towns and to meet at their airports. And Jimmy Carter carried that against Wallace and ended up the president of the United States because of that. And so people think that there's not such a thing as black power. It's not the black power that people shouted in the streets, but there's a subtle intellectual power that has led this nation as far back as Crispus Attucks being the first one to give his life. But there couldn't have been a civil war even without not only Lincoln, but I'm slipping now. My memory is giving all.
Well, of course, Civil War. You had Frederick Douglass. You had abolitionists.
Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, you had folks who were putting pressure on the political system. Brian, what's your question, Brian, for Ambassador Andrew Young?
Hi, Ambassador. Quick question for you. Obviously, we all learned at a young age of the I Have a Dream speech. I'm wondering the conversations you had with Mr. Jones and maybe some tidbits you could share with us, maybe some things we didn't know about the creative process of what went into writing that speech, if you could share that with us.
Well, I was not around then. I was in the South, and that was done in the North. And there wasn't a lot of contact between those of us who were out in the sticks and those who were writing speeches. That came later. But nobody ever really wrote speeches for Martin Luther King. Clarence came up with the idea that the government had given the Negro a bad check, and that he refused to believe that when we go to the Bank of Justice, it would come back marked insufficient funds. And that was the theme. But this real speech came from Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson was up there on the podium, and while Martin was speaking, he was really reading the speech that Clarence wrote. And it was a good speech, but Mahalia had heard him speak with no notes a couple of weeks before in Detroit.
Yep.
And she kept saying, well, tell him about the dream, Martin, tell him about the dream. And so when he shifted gears and said, I have a dream, that was another speech altogether. And that's the one that caught the attention. But it was the combination of improvisation and scholarship. And that speech pulled together both.
Well, also have to remind people that Clarence was smart enough to grab copies that were handed out to the press and put a C and circle it for copyright. And he was the one who went down and copyrighted that speech. He kept the original receipt. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why the King estate owns and controls it. It didn't go in the public domain because, again, the lawyer was smart enough to say, this thing might be something. Let me copyright this speech for Dr. King.
But now, that's a point of, well, I took the other route. I never copyrighted anything of mine. I want it all in the public domain. And I got it for free, and I thought I should share it for free.
But that's how lawyers think.
Well, and that's good. That's good. It's good that we have lawyers thinking that way, but there's some negatives there also. This was a freedom movement, and everything should have been free.
Understand? Let me ask you.
Freely given. It was freely given to us, and we should freely give it back to the people.
Let me ask you this here. A friend of mine who called you to let you know that Clarence passed, my man Ron Gilliard, when he said he called you, your response was, Clarence got to Martin first again. He said he was always getting to him first.
Yep. Well, I'm not in a hurry, and I feel as close to Martin Luther King as I did when I was going to get him coffee in a staff meeting. all the women on our staff refused to get coffee for the men. And they were independent first, so they'd say, Andy, get Dr. King some coffee. I got up and got the coffee.
Last question. What you miss most about Clarence Jones? Or what will we miss the most?
Well, Clarence never stopped working. I mean, from 1955 on up to the present, he was always planting seeds. He was always calling people and planting ideas. And he always dealt with it with a sense of humor. And he never lost his way in terms of who did he serve. He served the people of God who were following Martin Luther King.
And we'll close it out with that. Ambassador Andrew Young, it's always a pleasure to see you. Tell your wife hello, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you soon because you're always somewhere in your scooter taking pictures and speaking truth.
All right. God bless you.
Take care, Pratt. Thanks a lot. Folks, we were in Selma for the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Clarence Jones was there, and I got an opportunity to get his thoughts on that particular day. Let's roll it. Okay. All right. Y'all don't have the video? Okay. All right. So no, that's not it. So there are a number of times I interviewed Clarence. Our paths crossed on numerous occasions, and one of them was when we were in Selma. Also later, when we were at the White House for when he was honored. When he was honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So let's do this here. Do we have the video of the ceremony when President Biden presented him with the Medal of Freedom? Okay, roll that.
Born in Philadelphia, the cradle of our democracy, Dr. Clarence B. Jones wielded a pen as a sword and gave words to a movement that generated in freedom for millions of people. A speechwriter and lawyer for Dr. King, he helped define the enduring ideas included in The Dream that will be ever engraved in the ethos of America. Letting freedom ring, Dr. Clarence B. Jones. Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Clarence B. Jones. The Philadelphia son of domestic workers and a former foster child, Clarence Jones became the wordsmith for a movement. A doer of the word, he was an Army soldier on the front lines in the battlefield and a civil rights lawyer on the front lines in the courtroom. Wise and unflinching, Clarence Jones's lyrical prose and prophetic life shows us all the enduring power of the idea of America. An advisor and speechwriter to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he helped write a new American Declaration to ensure we hold these truths to be self-evident, is forever linked with, I have a dream.
As I said, I was honored to be a guest of Clarence's at that Medal of Freedom ceremony, and this is when I got him to say a few words to us.
Clarence, how you feel with that around your neck? Brother.
Oh, I can say that I never forget that my parents were domestic household servants. You understand? My mother was a maid and a cook, and my father was a chauffeur and a gardener. And I'm standing here on their shoulders. You understand? I never get that.
It's a great day.
Great day.
Well, I'm glad to be here to witness it.
I'm glad that you are here with me, my brother.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Clarence was always complimentary. So at Harry Belafonte's memorial service it took place at Riverside Church in New York City, I was sitting here recording a video. Y'all get that video ready, please. Video, Clarence and I in the video. He was always, and one thing I appreciated, and this happened the first time I actually met him. I forgot where I was, and he walks up to me, and he said, "Martin would be so proud." He said, "You are what we fought for." And even when I talked to him just 2 weeks ago, his son Ben said, "Yeah, we downloaded." He said, "The Black Information Network to hear your commentaries on the Black Information Network." He was always affirming every time we talked, and it was always fabulous to hear his voice. This is when we were in Selma for the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. So, Clarence, what does this day actually mean for you?
Today's an extraordinary day, Roland, because earlier I watched the march, and I saw an outpouring of African Americans, a lot of young African Americans, and they were holding up placards, and many of the placards talked about voting. In fact, one sign said, "We're not afraid to vote. We're not afraid to vote." Okay? Hey, obviously it's a poignant moment too. Okay? Because there are lots of people, a lot of people known, but a lot of people unknown. Hosea Williams is not here. Okay, James Bevel is not here. Okay? A lot of people that I know work 24/7 to make this day happen are no longer with us. All right? This is an extraordinary day, and this day should send a message to Congress, and it should send a message to the African American community. And when we come together, we cannot let the commemoration of this 50th anniversary go past like just another anniversary. This is a seminal point, okay? Too many people have died. Too many people's lives. You know, war has a lot of casualties. Not everybody just gets killed. A lot of people get in depression, you know, they get, marriages break up, go into bankruptcy, business, so forth. Those are all casualties of the civil rights movement in order to make this country a better country. But what's the central theme here? Vote, vote, vote.
All right, folks, this is at the Harry Belafonte Memorial Service.
I'm here at the Harry Belafonte Celebration of Life with the legend himself, Clarence Jones. Always good to see him. Looking good, looking clean, and the ladies still falling all over him.
Roland is my godson, man. A young man I've always been so proud of. And I remain even more proud of him today because I've seen his recent journey. Recent, I mean the last 10 years. This is one bad dude. He embodies the very essence of what it is to be black with integrity in our country today. You know what I just said? I didn't say to be black. I said to be black with integrity.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, baby. Appreciate it.
In 2018, when we were in Memphis for the 50th anniversary for the assassination of Dr. King, there was a conversation that took place. Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. was on the stage, Quentin James, Tamika Mallory. It was also Gina Belafonte, April Ryan moderated it. It was a fascinating conversation. And Clarence was his usual feisty self. We're going to play that in a moment. I want to go back to our panel here. The thing here, Joe, the thing here, guys, I got it. The thing here, Joe, I go back to what he wrote in his book. Here he was, a corporate lawyer, doing very well, making lots of money in LA, and King meets with him. Dr. King understood he needed bright minds there with him. And Clarence writes that when he goes to this speech, he said he had no intentions on leaving his well-paid law firm job. He said, but King spoke and he called on the best and the brightest to give their talents to the movement. And he said, it's not enough for you to get paid. I'm just thinking back to the previous conversation with Howard Bryant about people saying, man, let these young guys get their money. King said, no, he needed folk to give something back for the cause of our people. And that's what convicted Clarence Jones to join the civil rights movement.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you hear those stories quite a bit about Martin and people that had the power to persuade. Even my own father-in-law had the fortuitous nature to meet Dr. King on a plane, sitting next to each other. He was a trained lawyer, one of the first black lawyers in the state of Texas, I believe. And by the time that conversation was over, he went to his family and said, I've got to move to Atlanta and be part of SCLC. And he ended up being the housing point person for that issue and dedicated his life to the issue. So it takes people like this that make a decision to come out of corporate America, which, I mean, his parents were domestics, et cetera. I mean, he had come a long way. But then he figured out that what the most important thing he could do was, as well as Dr. King persuading him of the same, is to close the gap between those generations, between what his parents had to do and what he was able to do, to stand in and fill that gap so more people could have the future that they wanted. And so this is a true celebration because of his impact. Thankfully, he lived a good, long life. And thankfully, we have more people of all of us. We have to all be reminded that we need to answer the question and the call as to what we're doing to move us forward, regardless of how we may be doing at any given moment.
Brian, I alluded to this when we were talking to Ambassador Young. There are a lot of people, a lot of names that we know. But then there's so many people who had major contributions, names we did not know. And so when you talk about Clarence Jones, Stanley Levinson, again, there were people who were, they weren't in front of the microphone. They weren't on the front lines. They were not protesting, but their advice, their counsel, and their expertise played a huge role, as Andrew Young said, in the strategizing, in the implementation of battle plans for the movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. You know, some names that some people might not know, but behind the scenes, what they were able to accomplish in moving forward in this society today, it's so prevalent and it's so important. Obviously an icon in so many different ways, but I look at so many people in society today, and there are so many unsung heroes that we haven't heard of as well. But I think no matter what the color of your skin is, you have to ask yourself, what are you doing to help? What are you doing to further whatever movement that you are for? And when you look at Mr. Jones and what he was able to accomplish and the long, great life that he lived, we have to remember that. And moving forward, like I said, it shouldn't matter what color your skin is. It shouldn't matter how old you are. What are you doing to help us further along civilization so that we all can be treated as equals and that we all can have a voice? Certainly that's what Mr. Jones did moving forward, and I certainly appreciate him, and we should certainly celebrate his life.
Mustafa?
When we come together, those are the words that I continue to have resonate in my brain. You know, when Brother Jones was saying, when we come together, you know, the earth rumbles, you know, the skies open up. And when we believe that we can make change happen, then it becomes a reality. If you're a young athlete, like we were talking about earlier, when we come together, we make change happen. You know, if you are someone who's interested in being in the political process, when we come together, we can make sure that we have the representation at all levels of government that helps to make change happen. But the main part of it is that when we come together. So I will always remember those words, and I'll make sure that I incorporate those as I share with others across our country.
On the night of April 4, 2018, there were conversations that took place. There was this fantastic conversation Tamron Hall moderated with Reverend James Lawson and Congressman John Lewis. The second panel was a conversation with young and old, including Tamika Mallory, Quentin James, Clarence Jones, Gina Belafonte, Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. There was another gentleman, I do not have his name, April Ryan was a moderator of that. And when Clarence got an opportunity to spoke, let's just say he didn't hold back.
I think one of the most important, enduring mandates from the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. is we have to pause a little bit and pay a little bit more attention to facts. Huh?
No fake news.
Facts, F-A-C-T-S. Okay. And we have to do that, look at facts within the prism of the history of how we got to be where we are today. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. was a compassionate, loving person, committed to Gandhi, to nonviolence and so forth. And we should, in his spirit, have the discipline and commitment to nonviolence. But that doesn't mean we should also have amnesia, okay? And amnesia is part of taking the time to study facts. For example, this is the 50th anniversary, all right? I don't know why former President Bill Clinton and former President Barack Obama, I love the brother, okay? Why have they not been here? Don't tell me somebody sent a video.
Come on, Clarence.
Don't tell me somebody sent a statement.
Come on, Clarence.
Okay? We have got to start being honest about facts.
Yeah.
Okay? Now that is simply a fact. They're not here.
All right, I want to stop you one second.
Listen.
What about this president? He's the policymaker. Do you put an onus on him as well, on this president?
Hold on. No. That's not what I'm saying.
I get you.
No.
But he's the policymaker at this moment.
No. You know, excuse me. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying we can't have amnesia about dealing with the reality of our experience. And the reality of our experience, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Linda Brown, all of the Brown versus Board of Education, those are powerful things that occurred. What they did over the past 50 years is extraordinary. And the fact that we're here to celebrate the legacy of this particular person that I was honored to work with sometimes 24/7, 7.5 years, that's one thing. But I could not, but I'm simply saying studying facts, that's a fact that we have to not forget. Now, the other reason I'm saying we have to study facts is that how did we get to be like we are today? We got to be like we are today because of the legacy of slavery. You understand what I'm saying? So somebody said to me, well, not every white person in America is a racist. No, actually said, not every white man, as the question was, is a racist. And I said, no, but I say, I operate on the historical presumption, okay? Until proven otherwise, based upon the history of what I've seen in this country, is be an exception for any white male in this country not to have racism and put it into himself. That doesn't mean I'm calling every white person a racist. I'm just dealing with the reality. The reality is, if you're white in America, Today, okay, you wake up in the morning and you have something called white skin. Some people call it a privilege. Some people call it a liability. I say it's a fact that we have to remember and put it into historical circumstances. Now, how is this related to why we are today? Is that we dare not sit and have platitudes about Martin King was this and Martin King was that, unless you understand the reality of not only what this man achieved. He sought to redeem the soul of America, as we all know. I know I'm preaching to the choir. The March on Washington speech, his famous I Have a Dream speech, that was just a call to the conscience of America, okay? I'm saying that today, as we sit here honoring his legacy of 50 years, that we have a responsibility, particularly to the young people, to maybe get them to look at things as I believe he would have looked at them presumptively. And I don't want to take too much time, except I was fortunate. The firm I was with, I represented James Baldwin, not his own little lawyer, but I was James Baldwin's lawyer. And as a course of that, I had spent a lot of time talking to Jimmy. And one of the things that was so profound about my conversation with Jimmy, he would say, you know, Clarence, he said, you know, Negroes, black people are extraordinary people. I said, I know that, I know, Jimmy. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, we are the most extraordinary people in the history, in all of human history. I said, well, Jimmy, that's a little deep now. He said, the reason I say that is that we as a people have such deep capacity to love, to care and forgive. Because what other people on the face of the earth, he would say, would have 240 years of slavery, be enslaved and still have the capacity to love your slave master. What bitch could do that? That's why we are extraordinary people. So when I say, getting back to facts, that's my shorthand way of saying, evaluating the history of what happened here 50 years ago until where we are today, and recognizing that Dr. King was a leader of a movement that involved many people of less well-known names. You know the name Abernathy, and you know the name of Jesse Jackson and so forth, but you may not know the name of James Orange, you know? You know the name of James Bevel, of course, but you may not know the name of Jimmy Lee Jackson, or maybe you do, no. You may not know all of those men and women who tirelessly worked to make Dr. King's leadership of the movement to have its success. It wasn't successful because he was a great orator. It was a success because of the courage of Anita Boynton walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Right, that's right.
Okay? It was a success. Where's my success is because of Diane Nash.
Yeah.
Okay? And this icon here, James Lawson. Okay? And that man sitting right there, you know why the Democratic Party got representation before they didn't have it before? Okay? Because of his 1984, because of his election campaign. Jesse Jackson's 1984 and 1988 presidential campaign scared the living bejesus off of the political establishment. Scared that they didn't believe it. Didn't believe it. And so, we have a responsibility to talk facts and reality. And I'm sorry if I came down very hard, but I really feel this. I feel very pained. I personally feel pained I can't speak for anybody else. I'm not speaking for the civil rights movement. I don't pretend to speak for Martin Luther King Jr. I'm saying Clarence B. Jones, from the road that I traveled with this man, Martin Luther King Jr., and with Jesse Jackson and others, I can't compute. Oh my God, Barack Obama wouldn't have been president but for the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. Would not have been president. Now, if you think I'm treating so harsh, fine. But somebody's got to tell you that is a fact. That's not fake news. That's not fake news. If somebody wants to offer me a rebuttal, say, oh, Obama would have been president, without the work of Martin Luther King Jr.
No.
He himself said it. I'm with him in the White House, graciously taking a picture with him, and he's grabbed my hand, and he said, but for you, John Lewis, C.T. Vivian, name some, I would not be in this Oval Office. So, my brother, where are you?
Okay.
Oh, what I always appreciated about when I would see Clarence and talk with him, and there were many conversations that we had, and elders like him, what they would often do is they weren't afraid to speak truth. They weren't afraid to say what other people were afraid to say. It didn't matter. For them, it wasn't all about, your titles and, I need to watch what I say. These were people who went through the battles. These were the people who stood tall. And they were willing to challenge power, whether they were black or white. And that, to me, is the lesson that we have to take away from the likes of Clarence Jones and so many others. And when I reflect on when I was going through all of these photos, Mustafa, and I was pulling my videos, that night in Memphis, 2018, Congressman John Lewis was on that stage, now an ancestor. Reverend James Lawson was on that stage, now an ancestor. Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. on that stage, now an ancestor. Clarence Jones on that stage, now an ancestor. I came across a photo of Bernard Lafayette, now an ancestor. In fact, Reverend Jackson, Bernard Lafayette, Clarence Jones, we lost those three in the last 3 months. Those titans, I mean, when you talk about the people who were closest to Dr. King, the last left is I would say Ambassador Andrew Young. You have Bob Brown in North Carolina. And so what we have to always do is, one, show our love and appreciation for these freedom fighters. But now, and this is why we talk about those athletes now. This is why we talk about the movement now. 30 years from now, we should not only be talking about the names of Clarence Jones and others, but if this generation today does not put in the work, then the names will not be called. When the roll call is made 30 years from now, we're going to have to go back 80 years because the folk today didn't do the work.
100%. I mean, it is about Black excellence. It's about Black integrity, as our brothers shared. It is about doing the work, right? So last night, I was on the phone and we were having some conversations about the folks who have crossed over. And the question became, who are the young lions and who are the young lionesses who are stepping forward? And of course, there are some that we see in the news and in the streets, but others have a responsibility as well. So one, we got to make sure that we're passing the baton, but we also, something has to be inside of you that says, I am going to make sure that my community continues to be uplifted and it continues to move to higher heights. And that takes work, that takes organizing, that takes dedication. And we've got to make sure that, folks understand that, this is not easy. None of this work has ever been easy. Any of those great leaders that you just mentioned and others, they had to put a lot into it, time away from family, health challenges because they didn't focus on themselves. And yes, well, hopefully today, we have better opportunities for folks to take care of themselves, but there is still a price to be paid. And most folks don't want to pay the price. But the price also means that you are a person of integrity, that you are a person of excellence, and you've earned that. So I look forward to the next sets of generations. So many of us work with those folks who are coming up. But we need more because it can't just be a handful of folks. It has to be truly a movement filled with all kinds of folks bringing different types of skills, but it comes back down to that integrity and that excellence, which is really those core elements that will determine if you are going to actually be transformational or not.
When we were in Montgomery, Joe, in the aftermath of the Supreme Court Louisiana versus Callais decision, the call was out and they said, we need a new generation of civil rights lawyers. We need a new generation of people who are not just securing the bag in so many areas. Because the battle that we are in today it is a social battle, it is a moral battle, it is a political battle, and it is a legal battle, and we need everybody on the battlefield.
It's wonderful to have the privilege to do work actually good for the soul. And so there is something to being able to carry the torch forward. There's so many ways to carry the torch forward, for sure. But fundamentally, people need to be involved. Lawyers need to be involved. Community organizers need to be involved. Educators need to be involved so that truth is actually being taught. There are so many roles for us to play, for us to contribute to moving us forward. And so there's no reason why anyone with the mind to do so cannot do so. And what I want to encourage people is not everybody's a civil rights lawyer, and that's okay too.
Yep.
But there are ways that we can all contribute starting now. And starting is information, conversations in your household, in your domain, in your areas, in your churches, etc., and really moving things forward and aligning with churches, aligning with organizations that truly are moving forward, churches that are actually doing the gospel when it talks about doing justice, not just the gospel about, oh, I'm sitting still and I believe something. Your belief is going to turn into action if it's true belief. And so we have to have an all hands on deck approach to move all of us forward the best way that we can. And this is the time to do it. There's never been a more urgent time in our lifetimes.
Brian, when I think about Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, when I think about Viola Liuzzo, when I think about James Reed, William Lewis Moore, I mentioned Stanley Levinson. There were others. There were folks who were white who were engaged in this movement. When you think about those freedom workers as well, and there were some folks who said, man, no, don't have these white students come down here because if one of them gets killed, it's going to all come down on us. The moment we're in right now, and this is what I've been saying as we are embarking on Freedom Summer 2026, Freedom Fall 2026, where the goal is to register as many black folks as possible in the country, especially in the South, that there are white folks who need to be registered as well. And what I've said to white Democrats, white politicians, white progressives, don't just come to our marches and give speeches. How are you organizing and mobilizing white communities in Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas? That also has to be happening.
Absolutely. Roland, we all need to play a role. People that look like me need to play a role. And I can't even begin to tell you, just over the last couple days, I think yesterday was the 6-year anniversary, sadly, of George Floyd being murdered. And I can't even begin to tell you how many people in this country that look like me still lie and say that George Floyd died of a drug overdose. And we have to be able to separate fact from fiction. We need to yell out and scream out truth and power to fiction. And Mr. Jones was talking about that a little bit in this part of the speech that you just played. People who look like me need to also spread the word We need to show a sense of leadership and need to organize. There's no doubt about that. There's no question about that. And for people out there that think that their opinions aren't being heard, well, guess what? Rise up. Speak up. It's okay to do that. There are too many people out there in society right now that are either afraid to speak up, or maybe they're afraid what some of their friends might think of them if they look like me. Well, guess what? Too bad. Too bad. Just because you're white doesn't mean that you should be on the right side of history and speak truth to power. That's what I try to do on my show every day, and that's why it's an honor to always be with you guys and to be with you, Roland, on this show. I'm going to keep fighting the fight as long as others out there are willing to do the same, and that's what we need to do, no matter what the color of our skin is, and that's what I'm going to try to do every day.
Absolutely. And so let me thank all three of y'all being with on the show today. Brian, Mustafa, and Joe, thanks a lot. Folks, we got a little bit more on the show. We're going to our Black Star Network headlines, and then I'll have my interview with Texas State Representative James Tallarico. It's a conversation you don't want to miss. Let's go to headlines right now. No.
Once again, President Donald Trump is going after former President Barack Obama, but this time sharing a meme depicting Obama's mugshot. On Sunday, Trump reposted the AI-generated image on his social media platform showing the 44th president holding an arrest place card reading Barack Hussein Obama as part of a Brady Bunch-style grid. The picture includes 7 other people, such as Obama's former cabinet members, Susan Rice and Valerie Jarrett, and former FBI Director James Comey. Trump wrote, "This is bad. Sick group of people, very destructive to our great nation, caused tremendous damage through weaponization." Trump has repeatedly endorsed or amplified the idea of Obama being arrested on social media. And earlier this month, he reposted an unsubstantiated Democrat election interference claim that ended with "arrest them all, but first, Barack Obama." The Trump Justice Department is now deleting hundreds of press releases tied to the January 6th rioters from the DOJ website. The DOJ defended the move on social media, saying it was proud to reverse the DOJ's weaponization under Biden administration, claiming it was removing what it called partisan propaganda. Trump and his allies continue to reframe the January 6th defendants as victims instead of people being charged with attacking the U.S. Capitol. On his first day in office, Trump issued mass pardons for the rioters, and since then, FBI agents and DOJ officials connected to those investigations have reportedly been dismissed or fired. The administration is facing backlash over a controversial $1.8 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund that critics say could financially benefit the insurrectionists. Multiple lawsuits have been filed against the administration over the fund, including one from Capitol Police officers who say taxpayer money could end up financing the same extremists who attacked law enforcement on January 6th. And the Supreme Court is refusing to intervene in a discrimination lawsuit led by former Black Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores against the NFL. Well, this move allows the case to proceed toward trial. The justices rebuffed an appeal from the league, which wanted the case handled through its arbitration process rather than open court in New York. Justice Brett Kavanaugh dissented from the decision not to hear the case. Flores sued the league and 3 teams in February of 2022, alleging the league was rife with racism regarding its hiring practices when it comes to Black coaches. He was later joined in the lawsuit by fellow Black coaches Steve Wilkes and Ray Horton. Flores was fired by the Dolphins shortly before the lawsuit was filed. He is now with the Minnesota Vikings. He's the defensive coordinator. Pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly has filed a civil lawsuit against several individuals affiliated with Memphis, Tennessee's Church of God in Christ and a network of pharmacies alleging a drug rebate fraud scheme. The lawsuit claims that between 2020 and 2025, the Kojic Church and its affiliated organizations, Drug Place and Community Health Initiative, defrauded Eli Lilly out of more than $200 million by submitting false rebate claims for Trulicity prescriptions. The church has denied any involvement in the alleged fraud and has said it's cooperating with the investigation. Eli Lilly is now seeking an injunction, restitution, and additional damages. 5 consecutive years of growth in enrollment at Maryland's Morgan State University are paving the way for new housing at the HBCU. State officials have approved new leasing agreements, adding over 300 student beds starting in the fall of 2026. Morgan State University says the expansion is a key part of its long-term housing strategy, reflecting its commitment to supporting student success and community growth. Having already added more than 1,800 beds through recent projects, the university hopes to house more than 5,400 students by the fall of 2026, representing more than 46% of the student body. Plans for additional housing upgrades are scheduled for the fall of 2028. And the jazz world is mourning the loss of legendary tenor saxophonist, 95-year-old Sonny Rollins. Rollins died Monday afternoon at his home in Woodstock, New York, according to his longtime representative, Terry Hint. He released more than 60 albums over 7 decades, including the groundbreaking 1956 classic saxophone Colossus. He also earned acclaim for albums like Way Out West and The Bridge. Rollins continued performing well into the 80s before retiring in 2014 due to health issues. And throughout his career, he earned 3 Grammy Awards, Kennedy Center honors, and an honorary doctorate from the Juilliard School. Former President Barack Obama honored Rollins twice in 2011, presenting him with the National Medal of Arts and later celebrating him at the Kennedy Center honors at the White House.
Folks, don't forget to watch The Breakdown, Brittany Noble, every day, noon Eastern, right here on the Black Star Network. Again, The Breakdown, Brittany Noble, every day, noon Eastern on the Black Star Network. It is Election Day. Polls have closed in Texas today, where, of course, on the Republican side, you have U.S. Senator John Cornyn going against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton for the United States Senate. Whoever wins that race is going to face Texas Representative James Tallarico for the United States Senate. I had an opportunity to catch up with him last week. Here is our conversation. Representative Tallarico, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's jump right into it. What do you make of Donald Trump endorsing Ken Paxton, especially in light of this unbelievable, shocking plea deal his office cut with this man who sexually molested a boy, only getting a day in jail?
You know, I was part of the bipartisan majority in the Texas House of Representatives that voted to impeach our corrupt attorney general, and more of his corruption is coming to light. But I honestly don't think it matters who comes out of this Republican runoff, because both Ken Paxton and John Cornyn have sold us out as Texans time and time again. Both of them are far more interested in serving their billionaire mega donors than serving the people of Texas. Both of them are two sides of the same corrupt coin. So our campaign already knows who we're running against. It's those billionaire mega donors in this corrupt system. And John Cornyn and Ken Paxton are both just symptoms of that disease. And so we're going to stay focused on running against this broken system, this broken politics, this broken economy, because I think that's really at the heart of the matter.
You talked about corruption, and New York Times is reporting Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick gave $5 million to House Republicans right before he testified regarding Epstein. Donald Trump, massive amounts of trades, and the slush fund for people who were insurrectionists on January 6th. And I'm sitting here going, okay, Cornyn, Ted Cruz, all you law and order people, where y'all at? I mean, it is amazing how Republicans in the House and the Senate are completely silent, missing in action over what is blatant corruption by this administration. Trump's sons becoming partners in the companies that are getting billions of dollars in defense contracts. I mean, the raping and pillaging of the American Treasury is just astounding.
That's exactly right. And this hurts all of us. You know, corruption is not just illegal in many instances. Not only is it immoral, but it's also what's holding all of us back. It's why we can't afford anything. It's why we can't seem to get ahead no matter how hard we work. It's because the system itself is rigged against us. it's rigged in favor of the people at the very top, the billionaires, the puppet politicians who serve them. And so that's exactly why Ken Paxton and John Cornyn exemplify this corruption, because they have used their public offices, their positions of public trust, to serve their mega donors rather than serving us. I know we've talked about Ken Paxton's crimes, but John Cornyn was the deciding vote on that big ugly bill last summer. That big ugly bill that's going to kick millions of Texans off their health care. It's going to take food out of the mouths of hungry Texas children, all to give yet another tax break to John Cornyn's donors. So I want us to focus not only on the illegal corruption, which is, I agree with you, egregious and outrageous and must be held accountable, but I also want us to recognize the legalized corruption, which is when these politicians are able to curry favor and do the business of the people who donate to their political campaigns rather than doing our business. And we have to tackle both of those forms of corruption in this campaign.
It's interesting for me to watch some of the commercials, the ads of Republicans running in Texas, saying that we need to change government leadership, and I'm confused. They've, I'm still a registered voter in Texas.
Right.
My parents are in Texas. My brother and two sisters are in Texas, and I'm trying to understand. They've been in power. They literally control the state top to bottom for almost 30 years. Who in the hell are they talking about?
Exactly. No, that's right. And this is what the point I've been trying to make on the campaign trail is one party rule is always bad, whether it's the Republican Party, which is what we've had in Texas for 3 decades, or whether it's the other party, whether it's in blue states, because one party rule always leads to extremism and corruption because there's no accountability, because there's no competition. Competition is a good thing. It's good in business, it's good in sports, it's also good in politics, because when politicians feel like they've got to compete for every vote, when they're kept on their toes, that leads to better public policy. Roland, you know that I was able to flip a Trump district in Williamson County, Texas, back in 2018. I was part of a group of 12 Democrats who flipped red seats in the state house. And after we did that in 2018, in the very next legislative session in early 2019, suddenly the Republican Party in the state legislature was focused on improving public education and raising teacher pay and expanding health care. So they were on their best behavior because they were worried that they were going to get kicked out of office. And so that's why it's so important that we have competitive elections. That's why it's so important we protect voting rights and we ban these racist redistricting maps, because when people don't have a free and fair election, politicians are able to serve their billionaire donors, are able to consolidate wealth and power for themselves at our expense. And so, yes, this one-party rule is why we have the corruption we have in the state of Texas.
You talked about flipping a seat, a Trump seat there in Texas. What we have seen over the past couple of years, we've seen Democrats have success across the country in similar situations, a tremendous turnaround. In fact, in Texas, we've seen local school board races where people are turning back these Moms for Liberty right-wing zealots who were banning books and things along those lines. You got on the national level, you got these progressive podcast bros saying Ken Martin needs to resign, where Ken Martin keeps saying we have to invest top to bottom. We must invest in national races, state races, and local races. What do you sense is going on in terms of when you see these Democratic wins that don't get attention on the national level, but clearly mayoral races in Miami, in Boca Raton, and other places? What do you think is going on here where Democrats are seeing success in these lower level races?
And in Tarrant County, Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, we were able to win a district in the state Senate that Donald Trump won by 17 points in the last election. And so we're seeing this across the state of Texas, across the country. There is a backlash to the extremism and the corruption that people are seeing in our government. It includes people who voted for the president in 2024, including a lot of young people across the state of Texas who voted for Donald Trump because they thought he was going to lower costs. They thought he was going to end the forever wars. They thought he was going to release the Epstein files. They thought that he was going to finally put working people first by draining the swamp. And on all counts, he has done the exact opposite. He has raised prices. He has started new forever wars. He has, done his best to keep the Epstein files redacted and hidden, and he has gone further and made the swamp even bigger in Washington, D.C. And so people are feeling disillusioned, and it's incumbent upon me as the Democratic nominee in this race, it's incumbent upon our campaign to try to build a big enough coalition of energized Democratic voters and people who are feeling disillusioned on the other side. That's exactly how we won that state Senate seat in Tarrant County, and I think it's going to be how we win this U.S. Senate seat in Texas in November.
Obviously, you have to put together a broad coalition. Democrats have not fared well in these Senate races. The closest they got was Beto O'Rourke against Ted Cruz, where he got within 2.5 points of winning. We see in Texas has the most eligible black voters of any state in the country. We are seeing where Latino voters angry with what has been happening with ICE and other policies that have been trending back towards Democrat. And so in terms of, so how are you attacking this knowing full well you have to put together a coalition, a significant black turnout, significant Latino turnout, as well as getting a white turnout, knowing full well that you've had Republicans that have dominated among white voters?
You're exactly right. We have to build a big tent. We have to have a big coalition if we're going to pull this off, if we're going to win Texas. And I have experience doing this. You know, we talked earlier about how I flipped a Trump district in Williamson County, Texas in 2018. And in our district, we had historic black turnout. We had historic Latino turnout. And we were also able to peel off Republican voters who were feeling left behind by the Republican Party. And we did all those things, and it added up to a 51% coalition, enough to win the seat. And we're going to do that statewide. We're going to have historic black and brown turnout. We're going to have to make sure that young people are showing up. And we're going to have to compete out in rural Texas, where we may not win every county, but we are at least building our coalition so that we have enough people to win in November. That's going to be the playbook for winning this race in Texas.
Obviously, when it comes to black voters, you ran against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in the primary. You beat her in the primary. And look, there's going to have to be work there to get her supporters to back your candidacy. And so what has that outreach been? What does it look like? And not only that, just yesterday, I had a Black Men Vote on my show, and they had a survey that was done of more than 1,600 black men between the ages of 18 and 45, and talking about their concerns, their issues, very specifically, talked about that 19, 20%, some people given that black men voted for Donald Trump. And so, what is the message that you are speaking to African Americans in Texas that will get them to not only vote for you, but vote for you in significant numbers?
Yeah, this has been our top priority since the primary, is healing the divisions from that race and bringing our coalition back together. And it's my responsibility as the Democratic nominee to earn the trust, earn the respect, earn the votes of every black Texan. You know, the Democratic Party has a history of taking black voters for granted, of assuming that black Texans, black Americans are going to show up and vote for Democratic candidates. The fastest way to lose any election is to take voters or take communities for granted, to assume that they're just going to support your party or support your candidate. And our campaign is doing the exact opposite. I am out there treating every black voter as a swing voter, The same is true in the Latino community. The same is true with young people. We are, as a campaign, actively showing up, listening to, investing in Black communities. And I've been honored to worship in Black churches across Texas. I've been honored to meet with Black elected officials and Black community leaders across the state. We did a tour of our HBCUs. We held a town hall at Prairie View A&M, and then I was honored to give the commencement address at Paul Quinn College, the oldest HBCU in Texas. And so we've got a lot more work to do, but this is the priority of our campaign at the current moment.
Speaking of that Black Men Vote poll, economics, entrepreneurship jumps out. There in Texas, you had Republicans that got rid of the Texas Hub program. That was actually put in place by Republican Governor George W. Bush. That was highly successful, and Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick, they gutted that, and that's denying economic opportunities for African Americans. In the last year, Biden-Harris, Black African Americans got $10 billion in federal contracts, only 2%. But it was also a record number. Well, under Trump, that's now gone down to 1.2%. And so speak to what your plan is if you were elected to the United States Senate to drive economic opportunities, entrepreneurship opportunities, providing pathways to access to capital for African Americans, because that's the one thing a lot of folks, younger folks, millennials and Gen Z are really focused on, being entrepreneurs, being owners.
That's exactly right. And it's getting so hard to do that. I had a roundtable with Black business leaders in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I heard directly from Black business owners about the pressures from this new tariff regime that's making it even harder for small business owners. You mentioned the HUB program being eliminated. That has also added extra burdens and denied a lot of young Black entrepreneurs from getting the capital that they need. And so, yes, this is a major concern that I'm hearing across the state. It's something I care a lot about because, as you know, when Black businesses are successful, our Black communities are successful. And they are actively, our current leaders in the state of Texas and nationally are going after our Black businesses. They're also going after HBCUs. Something I heard a lot about at Prairie View A&M was the disparity in funding between HBCUs and institutions with similar percentages of low-income students. And so we are actively preventing young Black Texans from achieving their fullest potential, from giving the gifts that they were created to give. And as an educator, as someone who started his career in public service teaching Black and brown students on the west side of San Antonio, this is deeply personal to me. These are my students that are out there struggling to get a degree or start a business, and our government, our public policies are holding them back. And it's why I think we need a teacher in the U.S. Senate. We need a champion for all Texans, for all of our communities, representing us in the halls of power in D.C.
You mentioned earlier the racist gerrymandering that's going on, voting rights as well. We see the attacks on the Voting Rights Act. And so Texas was ground zero for Donald Trump stealing 5 seats that led to this battle that's going on all across the country. And so how are you making the case to voters? Because one of the things, because what I keep saying is that you can't just talk about losing political power. What you have to talk about is that when you lose political power, when you go from 4 African-American members of Congress in Texas to 2, that's loss of millions and billions of dollars flowing back to communities because if those are Republicans, they're not going to have the same agenda as Democrats, especially Black Democrats, for Black communities.
That's exactly right. It's not just political power. We also lose economic power. These two things are inextricably linked. It's why last summer, I, along with my Democratic colleagues in the Texas House, broke quorum to shine a national spotlight on these racist redistricting maps that systematically dilute the voting power of Black and brown Texans. And because we did that, we got a lot of heat. We were threatened with removal from office. We had bomb threats and death threats. But by taking that extraordinary action of breaking quorum, we shined a national spotlight on this racist redistricting scheme. And in the process, convinced California and Virginia and other states to join this fight and cancel out the gains made with these racist maps. And so I'm so thankful that the nation is paying attention to this issue finally, because it is at the heart of this systematic assault on our democracy, on the American experiment. Again, I believe that these rights at the ballot box are not given to us by politicians. They are God-given. They are inherent to every single human being, and it shouldn't matter the color of your skin or the zip code that you're born into. All of us have the right to shape our own destinies, to make our voices heard in this democratic process, and that's what's at risk here. And when our voices aren't heard, then we are locked out of power, both political power and economic power. And so I've said that the first bill that I want to file when we win this seat in the U.S. Senate is a national ban to end gerrymandering once and for all in every state in the union, whether it's a red state or a blue state. I've also said that we should pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We got to do these things at the very beginning. There are a lot of issues we face: education and healthcare and jobs and the economy, all critical issues. But none of those things are going to get better until we pass comprehensive political reform, until we fix the system itself. And that has to include a ban on racist gerrymandering schemes like the one we have in Texas, and it should include federal voting rights protection like we see in the John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
Housing is a critical issue. Because of the home foreclosure crisis in 2008, 2009, we built fewer houses between 2010 and 2020 than we did since the 1930s. Here we are in this next decade, and we're still behind housing. What specifically is your plan when it comes to affordable housing? Because it's a serious issue in Texas. We've seen skyrocketing home prices. Homes that normally would be in $90,000 to $150,000 now cost $250,000, $300,000 to buy.
Roland, you'll know the term starter home. I was chatting with the Gen Z members of our campaign team. I'm like the oldest person on our campaign team, which is a good thing. But I was talking to them about housing policy, and we were developing our platform around this issue. And I used the term starter home, and I just got blank looks from every Gen Z member of our team. The idea that you could afford a home in your 20s or in your 30s is a completely foreign concept now. We talked about the economic obstacles in the way of Black Texans, particularly Black young Texans. Gen Z, they were promised that if they worked hard, if they played by the rules, if they went to school, if they studied, that they could live the American dream. And now that dream is slipping out of reach for young people across Texas, including young Black Texans. And home ownership is an essential part. It is a cornerstone of that American dream. Because just think about it. If you can't afford to own a home, then it's harder to start a family. It's harder to put down roots. It's harder to build wealth. And so that dream of home ownership is such a critical part of the American dream. And I've actually led on this issue in the state legislature. I was able to bring both parties together to pass a major bill that reduces the cost of housing in the state of Texas. What it does is it allows for us to start building a form of housing that's really popular in most other countries around the world. It's called single stair housing. But here in Texas, our outdated building code requires that new housing developments, whether they're apartments or condos, have 2 stairwells. They say it's for fire safety, but nowadays there are plenty of ways with sprinklers and alarms to keep people safe in a complex that has 1 stairwell. And so what we did is we passed a bill to repeal that outdated part of the code. Now Texas is starting to build single stair housing complexes, which is going to dramatically reduce the cost to build these new housing units and hopefully increase the supply. Because ultimately that's got to be our goal, is building more supply. And sometimes that's going to mean repealing parts of the building code that are outdated and unnecessary and overburdensome. And it's going to require things like zoning reform to ensure we have more inclusive zoning in our cities, that we eliminate the vestiges of redlining and therefore make it easier for folks to live in the neighborhood of their choosing. And so I think if we do all those reforms, zoning reform, outdated building code, increasing the supply, then we can make homeownership a dream that's achievable for everybody.
Food prices. Folk talk about what is affordable gas prices. What actually can a U.S. senator do to impact food prices and gas prices?
Well, I think repealing these crazy tariffs would go a long way in relieving that pressure at the grocery store. And then I would also say ending this disastrous war in Iran could take a lot of pressure off our economy, because I know that Texans are feeling the pain at the pump. I just saw that gas in my neighborhood was over $4 a gallon. But we should also keep in mind that when diesel prices go up, that increases the price to ship things, and that ends up driving prices up even further at the grocery store. So ending these disastrous tariffs, ending this disastrous war in Iran, those are some immediate steps we could take to start relieving some of the pressure at the pump and at the grocery store. But I'll also just say that affordability, I think, has to be our focus when we win a Senate majority. Not just the price of groceries and the price of gas, but also the big structural costs in our economy. We already talked about the cost of housing, but also the cost of childcare, which is now more expensive than college in the state of Texas, and the cost of healthcare prescription drugs. You know that I passed the first ever cap on insulin copays in state history, and I've done a lot of work on making insulin affordable. But we've got to look at these structural costs in our economy that are holding working people back and making it harder for Texans, particularly young Texans, to live the American dream.
Just a couple of more questions, and that is, look, we got a few months. Every day is going to be crucial. And what we've seen in the past is that Democrats have been crushed by Republicans outside of the large counties. The last large county in Texas that's still red is Tarrant County.
That's right.
And so what exactly, how are you looking at, when you look at this massive state, 254 counties, to do in many ways what Elise Slotkin did in Michigan, and that is not lose by massive margins, and so, how do you look at that map and decide where to go, how much time to spend, but also putting together a massive campaign infrastructure to compete in 254 counties when you have a state Democratic Party that doesn't have people in every county?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're facing some organizational obstacles that our campaign is working to overcome. We launched this underdog campaign 8 months ago in my hometown of Round Rock, Texas. And since then, we have had tens of thousands of Texans showing up to rally with us or to attend town halls in every corner of the state. It's red areas, blue areas, purple areas alike. It's big cities, it's small towns, it's communities across the state. I've been holding events from Beaumont to El Paso, from Amarillo to Brownsville, and everywhere in between. And I'm shocked by the number of people showing up. We've had to move venues so many times. We were out in Longview, Texas. I know you care about East Texas like I do. And we had to move venues a feing times because we had so many people who wanted to show up. We ended up packing the downtown theater in Longview. We're going to be barnstorming the state, in the next week or so, now that the general election is kicking off. So showing up in all parts of Texas is critical to earn the votes and earn the support of communities across the state. And then I'll also say, because I'm only one person, one candidate, we have recruited more than 40,000 volunteers in this campaign. This is truly a grassroots movement. A lot of campaigns, in modern history, will just spend a lot of money on TV ads with no ground game. Our campaign is doing the opposite. We are building a true grassroots movement on the ground. 40,000 volunteers is an unprecedented number. We're going to keep growing that. In fact, I want to give just a quick plug, Roland, if you'll allow me. This summer, we're going to have a paid fellowship program for young Texans, and actually young people across the country, who want to learn the nuts and bolts of modern campaigning, who want to learn how to organize, who want to learn maybe how to run for office themselves one day. They can go to jamestallarico.com /join to learn about this fellowship program. And I'm hoping that we're going to have hundreds, maybe thousands of young people descending on the streets of Texas to knock doors and make phone calls and send text messages and register voters. It's going to take a true grassroots movement to pull this off. And then the last thing I'll mention is Texas is an expensive state. And so if you're going to reach everybody, you've got to have the resources to do it. And I am so proud that our campaign has already shattered grassroots fundraising records, all without taking a dime from corporate PACs. This is a people-powered movement that we're building. And we've got more than 500,000 people who have given $5, $10, $15 at a time. And they have blown past some grassroots fundraising records in this state and in this country. So I think if we can do all those things, if we can show up, if we can have a people-powered effort of volunteers and organizers all over the state, and if we have the resources to communicate to everybody, I think we're going to shock the world by winning this seat in Texas in November.
Last question. There's somebody who's listening, watching. They say, you know what? I don't believe in this system. I don't believe my vote serves any purpose. It has no value. And they will choose to sit on the couch. What do you say to that person to convince them why they need to be actively engaged in this election and why they should vote for you?
You said that a lot of people think that politics is corrupt, and you're not wrong about that. Politics is corrupt, but it doesn't have to be. What I'm trying to convince people of is not that politics isn't corrupt or that the system's not broken, because the system is broken, the system is corrupt. What I'm trying to convince people of is that we together have the power to change it. They wouldn't be trying so hard to stop you from voting if your vote didn't matter. And so, yes, I know that things are dark right now. I know that. But a little bit of hope is a dangerous thing. Inside every cynic is a wounded idealist. And so I am trying to speak to the wounded idealists all over the state of Texas, all over this country, because I really do believe that when we're together as one team, we are unstoppable. I know big money is powerful. I know that. But it's nothing compared to people power. And that's what we're doing here in this race, in this year, in this state. And so I hope that although there's plenty of reasons to be cynical, that people can dig down and find the last bits of hope that are left, because I think that's exactly what we need to pull this off, to change this country and transform this broken, corrupt system.
All right. Representative James Tellerico, we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland.
All right, folks. That was my conversation with James Tellerico. We'll have for you the results of the election so far. Looks like Ken Paxton is destroying John Cornyn in Houston. Congressman Christian Menifee is up big against Congressman Al Green. We'll have the results of the other races as well. All right, folks, that's it for us. Tomorrow, I'm going to have my one-on-one with Clarence Jones that we did for the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. We'll be running that on tomorrow's show. All right, folks, support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. If you want to contribute, please do so via Cash App. Use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. Checks and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle. Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered swag. You can get that, of course, at shopblackstarnetwork.com. Hats, T-shirts, hoodies, all that good stuff. Shopblackstarnetwork.com and get all these black-owned products. You can also get in our marketplace segment at shopblackstarnetwork.com. Folks, don't forget, if you want to Download the app fan base. Follow me at Roland S. Martin. And don't forget, watch Brittany Noble every day, noon Eastern, right here on the Black Star Network. And, of course, every Tuesday. Of course, you can also check out Fulfill Balanced Living Show, Balanced Life. Reverend Dr. Jackie Hood Martin. Check out those episodes every Tuesday. Folks, that's it. I'll see you tomorrow right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. And also be sure to get yourself in some good trouble, as Congressman John Lewis said. See y'all tomorrow. Holla!